"Do you hear that?" my neighbor whispered, peeking through her blinds. "That's the sound of Karen Jenkins gearing up to ruin someone's week again." I didn't believe her until I watched Karen catalog the precise shade of mulch in my flower bed at 6:17 a.m. When I signed the lease on 42 Sunnyside Lane, I didn't realize I was also signing an unspoken contract to obey a dictator. A neat, suburban dictatorship camouflaged beneath seasonal wreaths, manicured hedges, and cheerful community newsletters. As a caseworker for Child Protective Services, I had seen my share of dysfunction. Families fractured by addiction, poverty, and neglect. I thought a quiet neighborhood like Sunnyside Estates would be a step away from all that, a sanctuary. Instead, I stepped straight into the crosshairs of a woman who ruled the HOA like it was her personal fiefdom. My first day was telling. Before the moving truck even finished unloading, a clipboard-wielding woman with short-cropped platinum hair and a permanent frown marched across my lawn. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't ask if I needed help. She pointed at my mailbox. "That's not regulation chestnut brown," she snapped. I blinked. Chestnut brown? Section 4. Paragraph 12. HOA regulations. All mailboxes must be Sherwin-Williams chestnut brown, not espresso or coffee bean. You'll need to repaint it by Monday. Then she turned and marched away. I didn't know her name yet, but everyone else did. Sunnyside Estates looked like a postcard. Tree-lined sidewalks, symmetrical lawns, and not a single trash can in sight. The kind of place realtors described as tight-knit, upscale, and vigilant about standards. Every porch had identical lanterns. Every hedge was trimmed to a universal height. The homes were so alike you could get lost walking your dog around the block. But that artificial order? It was enforced like law by the HOA, and at the top of that pyramid sat one woman with a vice grip on everything. Deborah Jenkins. They called her Karen, even to her face sometimes. The kind of Karen who didn't just want to speak to the manager. She was a manager, the judge, jury, and executioner of all things minor and major in Sunnyside. People followed the rules not out of respect, but out of fear. You don't want a violation. My neighbor, Mr. Grady, had warned me during my second week. She once fined a family for having too many seasonal decorations. Said their Thanksgiving turkey statue constituted an unsanctioned display of personal beliefs. I laughed at the time. I shouldn't have. Karen's reach extended beyond the bylaws. She had cameras on her property pointed suspiciously toward the street. Every morning she walked the neighborhood with her clipboard, documenting alleged infractions like a suburban secret police. Once, I saw her measure someone's grass height with a ruler. She enforced rules others didn't even know existed. Section 3. Paragraph 8. Garden flags may not exceed 18 inches in width. Section 5. Paragraph 22. Outdoor furniture cushions must be a muted earth tone. But it wasn't just about rules. It was about control. Karen thrived on the fear she instilled. Residents whispered her name with the same reverence and dread reserved for natural disasters. And she had the HOA board in her back pocket. Mostly retirees who didn't want to rock the boat. What baffled me most wasn't Karen's zeal. It was how she weaponized order. Under the guise of community standards, she was running a micro-kingdom, and the subjects were too exhausted or too afraid to fight back. It didn't take long before I became her favorite target. My first official violation came 3 days after moving in. I received a printed notice, delivered by hand, that my trash bin was visible from the street. Not overturned, not overflowing, just visible. Then came the grass. 1.25 inches too long, she wrote in the margin of the form. Lawn maintenance required within 48 hours. It became routine. Every Monday morning, like clockwork, a new notice appeared taped to my door. Once it was because my back porch had non-regulation wind chimes. Another time, because my bird feeder was an unauthorized wildlife attractant. And she always signed them the same way. Deborah Jenkins, HOA President, Sunnyside Estates. But I knew what it really meant. Karen was watching. I tried to laugh it off. Tried to be civil. Even invited her to a community barbecue. She declined with a curt email that included a PDF of HOA fire pit safety regulations, highlighted. I wasn't the only one under her scrutiny, but I was the newest face. That made me the freshest canvas for her authority issues. She was testing me. By month 2, I had an entire drawer in my home office filled with Karen's notices. My mailbox saga became something of a joke. I repainted it 3 times. Each time, she claimed it still didn't meet chestnut criteria. I even went to Sherwin-Williams with a printout of the regulation. They helped me mix the exact shade. Karen still wasn't satisfied. Lighting affects color perception, she insisted. You'll need to repaint and submit photo documentation under neutral daylight. She wasn't enforcing rules anymore. She was escalating a vendetta. And while I kept my cool on the outside, inside my patience was thinning. The final straw came when I found her on my lawn, measuring the distance between my garden stones and the sidewalk. No greeting. No explanation. I opened the door. Can I help you? She didn't look up, just confirming that your decorative path complies with setback ordinances. It appears to be encroaching on community easement space. That night, I sat on my porch, drinking lukewarm coffee and watching her patrol the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff. And I made a decision. I wouldn't roll over like the rest, because while Kara might run the HOA, she had no idea who she was messing with. She's going to get someone hurt one day, Mr. Peterson muttered, arms crossed, watching Karen pace with her clipboard like a general surveying a battlefield. It's just a matter of time. He was wrong. It wasn't a matter of time. It was already happening. After 2 months of dancing around her rules, I stopped pretending Karen was just doing her job. It wasn't about maintaining the community. It wasn't about HOA standards. It was about her control and her obsession with punishing those she couldn't intimidate. Her war with me intensified. She began citing me for things that weren't even in the bylaws. A bird bath she claimed attracted non-native species. Solar lights that were too reflective. Even the spacing between my recycling bins. I had become her project. Neighbors noticed. Just keep your head down, Mrs. Rodriguez told me over coffee one morning. She thrives on conflict. Don't feed it. But I couldn't ignore the gut feeling that there was something deeper, darker beneath Karen's need for order. She wasn't just power-hungry. She was addicted to being feared. It was no longer HOA business. It was personal. I stood frozen with a grocery bag in one hand, a jug of milk in the other, as Kara marched up Mrs. Rodriguez's walkway and started pointing at her garden again. But my eyes were on the car. Tommy sat inside, shoulders hunched, wiping his forehead. Maybe she left the engine running. I thought, maybe the AC's on. I stepped closer. No rumble. No condensation. No hum from the vents. Just still baking silence. The windows were rolled up. The car sealed like an oven. I put the groceries down. The milk could wait. The tomatoes could wait. This couldn't. As I crossed the street, a hot gust of wind hit me in the face. The asphalt shimmered with heat. I could only imagine what it felt like inside that car. I approached the passenger window and tapped gently. Tommy looked up confused, his cheeks flushed and eyes slightly glazed. "Hey, buddy, you okay in there?" I asked loud enough for him to hear through the glass. He nodded half-heartedly, then pulled at the door handle. "Nothing. Locked. My mom says I have to stay here," he called, his voice muffled. "It's really hot." That was all I needed to hear. I straightened and looked toward the porch. Karen was in mid-rant, gesturing wildly at Mrs. Rodriguez's decorative fountain like it was a crime scene. I called out, "Mrs. Jenkins." She turned, her face a tight-lipped smile. "Mr. Wilson," she said, "if this is about your unauthorized bird feeder, it's about your son." I cut in, my voice calm but sharp. "You've left him locked in your car. The temperature is pushing 100 degrees. The car's off. No AC." Karen's smile disappeared. Her grip on the clipboard tightened. "I'll only be a few minutes," she said. "He has his tablet." I took a step closer. The tablet won't stop heat stroke. He's already flushed. Mrs. Rodriguez looked between us, suddenly silent. "This isn't HOA business, Mrs. Jenkins. It's a safety issue." Karen rolled her eyes, turning her back on me. But I didn't back down. Not this time. She escalated from notices to unannounced drop-ins. One afternoon, I found her standing on my porch, phone in hand, snapping pictures of a flower pot she claimed was blocking egress. Another day, she stopped me mid-jog, holding up a laminated copy of the community's standards like a badge. "You got unapproved wind chimes again," she said, smugly. I didn't even respond. I just kept running, heart pounding harder than before. But what made it worse, what turned the tension into a fuse, was how she started involving Tommy. Her son. She would drag him along on her inspections, sweating, tired, clutching a notepad he never wrote in. I'd see them making the rounds after school, Karen marching like a commander, Tommy trailing behind, red-faced and silent. It was unsettling. No kid should be part of his mother's power trip. Then came the Saturday everything changed. July 14th. A heat wave hit the valley like a sledgehammer. By noon, the temperature reached 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity wrapped around us like wet cellophane. I had just returned from the store, milk sweating in my trunk, the sun searing my neck, when I saw her, Karen, wearing her usual crisp polo and khakis, clipboard tucked tight under one arm, marching across the cul-de-sac toward Mrs. Rodriguez's house. Trailing behind her, moving slow and squinting in the light, was Tommy. Even from across the street, I could see it. His face was already red. His posture drooped. And Karen? Karen didn't even glance back. She reached her car, turned to him, and snapped, "Stay in the car. I won't be long." Then she hit the lock button. Twice. The beep echoed through the street like a gavel. "You have no idea what kind of power I have in this neighborhood," Karen hissed, stepping closer. "You think you can intimidate me with your little badge? You're the one who should be careful, Mr. Wilson." The veins in her neck were taut, her eyes wild. But I wasn't backing down. Not with her son roasting inside a sealed car like he was a code violation instead of a child. Tommy was still inside, barely visible now through the tinted glass. His head had slumped slightly toward the window, his mouth parted as if he was struggling to breathe. His small hands moved sluggishly when I waved. Karen had barked at him earlier, "Stay in the car. I won't be long." She hadn't even looked back. It wasn't discipline. It was dismissal. He wasn't her son in that moment. He was a detail, an afterthought, a loose thread she wanted tucked away while she polished her community image. That's when I realized this was more than negligence. This was normalized behavior for her. The absurdity of it all hit me like a hammer to the chest. She had locked her child in a boiling vehicle, so she could wag a finger at ceramic garden decorations. Her priorities weren't just backward, they were dangerous. From her spot on Mrs. Rodriguez's porch, Karen was still ranting. She jabbed a pen toward a cluster of garden gnomes, speaking in sharp, exaggerated syllables. Mrs. Rodriguez stood there silently, arms crossed, nodding with the hollow obedience of someone too tired to argue anymore. I wasn't. "Karen!" I shouted again, louder this time, approaching the base of the porch steps. I said. She snapped, turning mid-sentence. "This will only take a minute." "That minute could kill your son." I replied, my voice measured but firm. She narrowed her eyes. I pointed to the car. "It's off. Completely shut. It's 98 degrees out here, and it's worse in there. You know how quickly that can escalate." She scoffed. "He's fine. I gave him water before we left. He has his tablet. Don't start lecturing me about parenting. Not when you can't even cut your lawn properly." My hands clenched. She was deflecting, grasping for dominance. I didn't rise to it. I didn't need to, because I had something more powerful than her rules. Facts. I stepped back from her, eyes locked on the car. Inside, Tommy's movements had slowed. He leaned heavily against the seatbelt, and his shirt clung to him like a second skin. I knew the numbers. I'd sat through too many trainings, read too many grim case files. I'd interviewed grieving parents and opened reports that began with the words, "Child found unresponsive in vehicle." In just 10 minutes, the interior temperature could rise 20 degrees. In 30, it could top 120. At 104 degrees, a child's internal organs begin to shut down. At 107, heat stroke becomes fatal. The thermometer on my wrist read 98, but that car was an oven, and Tommy was baking inside it. I approached the passenger side again, crouched low, and knocked softly on the glass. Tommy turned toward me slowly. His eyes were glazed. Sweat had formed a sheen across his forehead, dripping down his temples. His lips looked dry. "You okay, buddy?" I said gently, trying to smile through the panic rising in my throat. He didn't nod this time. "I don't feel good," he mumbled. "It's really hot." I reached for the door handle, yanked, still locked. I glanced back toward Karen. She stood, arms crossed now, watching like she was daring me to escalate. I didn't hesitate. I stood tall, crossed the street, and walked straight toward her. Mrs. Rodriguez took a step back as I ascended the porch. Her eyes were wide, darting between us like she expected fireworks. Karen raised her chin. "Are you seriously going to start a scene over this?" "I'm not starting anything," I said, "but you will end it right now." She scoffed again. "This is none of your business." I reached into my wallet and pulled out my CPS badge. "It is now." Her face paled. "You think you're above the rules because you have a badge," Karen spat, eyes narrowing. "Well, guess what? I make the rules here." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about her son. This wasn't about safety. It wasn't even about me. It was about her throne. And she was willing to let her son suffer to stay on it. Back at the car, Tommy's words rang like a warning bell in my mind. She said I had to stay with my tablet. He hadn't questioned it. Not once. Like it was normal. Because to him, this wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was routine. Karen had likely left Tommy in the car like this dozens of times before. Maybe not always in this kind of heat, but the pattern was clear. She saw him not as a child to be protected, but as a pawn to be managed. It was my job to stop that. I stood eye to eye with her on the porch. Her posture was stiff, hands clasped behind her clipboard like it was a weapon. "You've left your child locked in a car on the hottest days of the year," I said, my tone even but firm. "He's visibly overheated. That's child endangerment." Her lip curled. "He's fine. I gave him water before we left. He's not some baby." "He's 8, I replied, "and trapped in a metal box that's becoming a furnace. He told me he doesn't feel good." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Kids exaggerate. He's just trying to get attention. He always pulls at drama when I'm in the middle of important business." Important business? She was still talking about garden gnomes like they were state secrets. "I don't need parenting advice from someone who can't even follow mailbox regulations," she snapped, deflecting once again. "I'll be done in a few minutes." He has his tablet. He's distracted. "You're not hearing me," I said, stepping closer. "He's in distress. I'm not just a neighbor. I'm a mandated reporter. If you don't unlock that car right now, I'll be forced to report this." Karen crossed her arms, her eyes hard as glass. "This is harassment." "No," I said calmly. "This is a warning." I pulled out my phone and held it up so she could see the screen. "Karen, I'm a Child Protective Services worker. If I witness a child in danger, I am legally obligated to intervene. This is a negotiable." She didn't flinch. Her eyes searched my face for a sign of hesitation, some small weakness she could exploit. Instead, I stared back with the same look I'd given 100 reckless parents before her. The look that said I will not be moved. "You unlock that car," I said again, "or I will call emergency services." She tilted her head, almost amused. "You wouldn't dare." Her voice dropped to a cold whisper. "Do you know how many infractions I could find in your yard alone?" she hissed. "Your grass is uneven. Your flower bed's border extends half an inch into the setback line. Your patio umbrella isn't even neutral beige." She leaned in slightly. "I can bury you in fines. I can make your life here miserable. Do you really want to pick a fight with me?" It was a wrong threat, because now it wasn't just about Tommy. It was about every neighbor she'd silenced, every family she'd intimidated, every rule she'd twisted into a weapon. I raised my phone. "Karen Jenkins," I said calmly. "I'm calling 911. She stepped forward, her expression cracking for first time. Panic crept into her voice. "You're being dramatic. He's fine. You don't need to." "I've already waited too long." I dialed. The tone rang once, twice, a third time. She stared at me, eyes wide, clipboard trembling slightly in her grip. The moment I said child locked in a hot car, the 911 dispatcher's voice shifted. It went from cordial to clinical, from helpful to urgent. That's when I knew we were no longer in HOA territory. We were in criminal territory. The moment I pressed the dial button, Karen's posture shifted. Her face, once frozen in righteous indignation, flickered with something else, uncertainty. Not guilt, not shame, but fear, real fear. "You wouldn't dare!" she snapped again, her voice louder this time, as if volume might undo reality. I didn't answer her. I held the phone to my ear as the first ring buzzed through, and the next. She took a step toward me, hand outstretched as if to snatch the phone from my grip. "Too late. 911, what's your emergency?" "Yes," I said clearly, never breaking eye contact with Karen. "I'm reporting a child locked in a hot car. The parent is refusing to unlock it. The child is in visible distress." Karen's eyes widened, and something broke. She fumbled into her pocket, dug out her keys, and jabbed furiously at the unlock button. Beep, beep. The locks clicked open. "I'm unlocking it right now," she barked. "There's no need for theatrics." I turned my back to her and spoke into the phone. "Yes, I understand. But I think you should still send someone. The address is 42 Sunnyside Lane." She was behind me, ranting now, not apologizing, not asking about her son, just ranting. "This is unnecessary. Tommy's fine. You're blowing things out of proportion, and if the HOA hears about this, you'll regret." I ended the call and jogged to the car. The moment I opened the passenger door, heat exploded outward like a furnace vent. And then Tommy moved. Slowly, shakily, like a marionette whose strings were tangled. His face was beet red, his breathing shallow. "It was so hot," he said, barely above a whisper. I tried to open the door. He stumbled into me, legs weak, body limp with fatigue and sweat. I caught him in my arms. "You're okay now, buddy," I said softly. "We're going to get you cooled down." Karen's voice kept rising behind me. "He's being dramatic. He's always like this. You're making me look like a bad." I tuned her out. This wasn't about her. Not anymore. As I guided Tommy to the shade of my porch, a subtle shift happened on the street. Doors opened. Curtains pulled back. Faces peeked from behind fences. The silent community that Karen had ruled with a clipboard and a glare was awakening, and they were seeing her without the armor of bylaws. Mrs. Rodriguez stood frozen on her steps, clutching a gnome in her hand like a security blanket. Mr. Peterson walked across the street slowly, hands on his hips, brows drawn low. "I heard yelling," he said. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I knelt beside Tommy and handed him a cold water bottle from my grocery bag. He clutched it like a lifeline. He left him in the car. I said finally, "Locked. No AC. In this heat." Karen's shriek broke through the murmurs. "I told you I was only going to be a few minutes." He had his tablet. "This isn't some crime scene. It's just the HOA. He's fine." I raised him, didn't I? And in that moment, every eye turned to her. And no one nodded in agreement. Tommy sat quietly on the edge of my porch swing, sipping water, his breathing finally slowing. Karen stalked the driveway like a tethered pit bull, alternating between shouting and muttering to herself. "You think you're some kind of hero? Is that it? You want a medal for interfering with private parenting? You'll see what happens at the next HOA meeting. You'll all see." I ignored her. I focused on Tommy. "You're safe now," I told him. "Do you feel better?" He nodded faintly. I didn't think I was supposed to say anything. Mom always says I should wait. I looked him in the eyes. "Next time, don't wait." The distant wail of sirens crept into the background. Karen turned toward the sound, her face losing color by the second. What is that?" Mr. Peterson answered before I could. "That would be the consequences." Karen heard the sirens too late. She wasn't prepared for what they meant. Not really, because for all her threats, all her citations, all her grip on this neighborhood, she'd never had someone call her bluff with blue lights and a badge. 2 patrol cars rolled onto Sunnyside Lane, lights flashing in the hot afternoon haze. The crowd had grown. Neighbors stood on porches, sidewalks, even behind trimmed hedges, watching, waiting. Karen tried to compose herself, straightened her polo shirt, adjusted her clipboard under her arm like it would give her immunity. As the officers stepped out, one male, one female, both sharp-eyed and serious, Karen immediately moved toward them, arms flailing like a malfunctioning windmill. "Officers," she announced. "Thank goodness you're here. I need to report him, Mr. Wilson, for harassment and defamation. This is all a huge misunderstanding. I was tending to HOA matters and—" The female officer held up a hand. "Ma'am," she said, calm but curt, "we'll need to speak with everyone involved. Please wait on the sidewalk." Karen blinked, stunned at being cut off, and then she did something she hadn't done all day. She shut up. While one officer took my statement, along with those of Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Peterson, and 3 other neighbors, the other examined the vehicle. She returned with her digital thermometer in hand. Interior temperature of the vehicle reached 132 degrees, she reported flatly. No ventilation. All windows rolled up. Engine off. Child was locked inside for at least 15 minutes. Karen tried to interject. It wasn't that long. He had his tablet. "Ma'am," the officer snapped, "a child's body can reach a lethal core temperature in that time. The fact that he was conscious when we arrived is lucky, not proof of your parenting." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. The crowd was silent. The only sound was a soft glug of water as Tommy finished his bottle and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. 3 days later, a neighborhood-wide emergency meeting was called. For once, it wasn't Karen's doing. The HOA board gathered under the community center pavilion, normally used for potlucks and 4th of July events. Now it served as a courtroom. Karen, of course, wasn't there, but her absence echoed louder than any speech she'd ever given. Mrs. Rodriguez's teenage son had posted a video online. Karen screaming about authority while her son wilted in the heat. It made the local news. The vote was unanimous. Karen Jenkins was permanently removed as HOA president. A week later, she appeared in court for arraignment. Her hair was flat, her voice subdued. She faced a Class A misdemeanor for child endangerment. Maximum penalty, 1 year in jail and a $4,000 fine. The judge read the charges aloud. Karen's eyes were glassy. Her mouth moved, almost inaudibly, but I was just following the rules. As the bailiff led her away, her clipboard was left on the courtroom bench. I watched as it was swept up and tossed aside. Just paper now. No more power. No more fear. Just consequences. And the silent nods of a neighborhood finally free. Tommy sat next to me on the porch swing as the second officer knelt beside him gently. "Hey there, champ," she said kindly. "I'm Officer Dana. Mind if I ask you a quick question?" Tommy nodded. "Has your mom ever left you in the car before today?" Tommy hesitated, looked at me, then nodded again. "She says it's just for a few minutes," he said quietly, "usually when she's doing HOA stuff." Dana glanced toward her partner, then back to Tommy. "Does she leave the car running?" He shook his head. "She says it wastes gas." Karen exploded from the sidewalk like a firecracker. "That's not true. You're putting words in his mouth. He doesn't understand what's—" "Ma'am," the other officer said sharply, "step back." The clipboard fell from her hands. It landed with a hollow thud on the pavement, the symbol of her control. Useless now. The 2 officers spoke quietly for a moment, one of them relaying information through their shoulder mic. And then, just like that, the decision came. Officer Dana turned toward Karen with new tone, no longer investigative, authoritative, final. "Mrs. Jenkins," she said, "based on the evidence and witness testimony, we are placing you under arrest for child endangerment." Karen froze. "No," she whispered. "No, no, this isn't happening. I'm the president of this HOA. Do you know what that means?" Dana didn't blink. "It means you should have known better." The handcuffs clicked around her wrists with an audible snap. I demand to speak to someone in charge. Karen wailed as she was guided toward the police car. You can't do this. You'll all regret this. But no one moved. No one objected. In fact, a few neighbors nodded quietly. Mrs. Rodriguez even whispered, "Finally,